Okay, now that that's over, back to our randoms. We got 23 randoms left plus 4 end caps. So let's see what we roll next. 23 again. That's a movie, I think. Ohmuro Family. I believe this is a movie, and I believe it's actually a spin-off of Yuru Yuri, which I did not get very far in. But, who knows? Let's see if I even need context to watch this movie.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I expected with that one. I got about 10 minutes into Ohmuro K Dear Sisters, which apparently this is going to be 2 movies. And by movies, I basically mean OVAs because they're only like 40-ish minutes each. But I got about 10 minutes into the first one. I'm not sure why I even bothered once I knew that it was a Yuru Yuri spinoff, because I'm not a particularly big fan of Yuru Yuri. I just don't think the comedy... I don't like the pacing of the comedy. The way, like, everything is, like, the way the jokes are structured. It just... I don't find it funny, I guess is the long and short of it. And that kind of tracks with this movie. Also, for some reason, Studio Passion is doing it. I don't know when... If I recall, Yuru Yuri got handed off to another studio at some point. Like a couple years ago. It used to be Doga Kobo. And for as much as I didn't really vibe with the comedy, it did look good when it was with Doga Kobo. Now it just looks kind of average. Like, there was this stuff in the beginning where the walking animation looked real fucking janky for some reason. Yeah, I mean, if you like Yuri Yuri, you probably already know about this and already watched it. So, if you don't, nothing for you here. It's just more Yuri Yuri.
Okay, Ohmuro Family is coming off the list. Let's see what we roll next. It's going to be 20. Tonbo. I think this is a golfing one or something. Some kind of sports one. That's all I remember from the key visual. I also think it's unlicensed or something. Or maybe it's just on Hulu and I just didn't bother to check. Let's find out.
So I guess this is another one of those shows where the licensor just put it up on YouTube, like the whole series. Apparently it's also on Amazon Prime, but why would I do that when I could have YouTube? Well, actually, I can tell you why I would do that when you have YouTube, is because the YouTube compression fucking sucks. It is very clear that when this was uploaded, YouTube was not kind to the video file for this. There's a lot of artifacts in it. But even if there weren't, I don't think I would watch this show. I got about 10 minutes into Tonbo. It's really boring. It's just not interesting at all unless you really, 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 really like golf, in which case there was one scene in those first 10 minutes that would have caught your attention. Also, apparently, like, the main Tonbo is this middle school girl, but, like, the main golf guy who shows up on this island and meets her for the first time thought she was a boy when she first showed up, but I thought it was pretty obvious that she was a girl, because it's, like, kind of painted as, like, a reveal to the audience, too. And it's like, I didn't read the, like, premise for this or anything. All I saw was the key visual at one point, and I didn't really see it. I just kind of glanced over it. So, like, watching this show, I didn't really get the impression that anyone could think she was a boy. It was weird. But this show's boring. It's just super, super bland. And I just don't see the appeal of it unless you really like golf.
Alright, Tonbo coming off the list. Let's roll again and see what we get 20 again. Sandland. Okay, this is the adaptation of the Akira Toriyama manga. I read the manga like a decade ago and thought it was pretty decent. So I'm gonna watch the TV version of this because apparently they add on after after where the series ends, I guess. So we'll see some bonus content. Might not even get there though. Let's check out Sandland.
All right, just wrapped up all of Sandland. That was pretty good on the whole. And it also kind of exactly what I was expecting in terms of like what was good and what wasn't. Because now, if you're not familiar with this property, Sandland, the manga, was a one-volume manga by Akira Toriyama back in 2000, I think. So, not a lot of material there. I think it's only like 14 chapters. And so, only the first 6 episodes of this series adapt straight from the manga, which, to be honest, even I read this manga so long ago that the stuff it was actually adapting was just basically brand new to me. But this is a 13 episode show, so the other 7 episodes are new material, which supposedly was written by Akira Toriyama before he passed away. So presumably this is still him writing it. But overall, I do think the second half is noticeably less interesting than the first half, and I'm going to dive in a little bit into why. The first half is just like really tight but also very simple in like its structure. It is just, what am I trying to say? It's for some reason, like, I got like halfway through the first episode and I was like, this feels comfortable. This feels like anime should be, in big ass scare quotes there. Like, it feels nostalgic in a certain way, but also like just kind of fresh in terms of being like its own original property. And also, like, Toriyama, like, he's written like a few very long stories, but he's not was not a prolific writer in terms of like number of like fully realized like stories. Like, he's done a bunch of like one-offs and stuff. Like, I read that Akira Toriyama manga theater a couple years ago or something. That was pretty good. But he doesn't have like a large breadth of like, what am I trying to say? Of different like works. It's basically like he's got Dragon Ball, you got Dr. Slump, and then the video games he's worked on that I haven't played at all. I'm probably forgetting something, but I'm forgetting it. So it was nice to see a Toriyama writing style applied to a story that I basically had no experience with. I mean, I did, but I read it over a decade ago, so it was all brand new to me. And man, even in 2000, he still had it. This was like well after DBZ ended, I believe, a couple of years after. So, and he still had it back then. The comedy is really strong. Like, it's not like super bust your gut laughing kind of comedy, but it's like just nice and like peppy and like adds a nice little like punch ups to the scenes that they're in. And the world feels very Toriyama-esque in like its wackiness, but also how interesting it is, like how cool it is to look at. And like, just the like visual ideas that he has. Like we have this general who is like basically half cyborg at this point, floating around in like a giant like hover ball sort of. We have this very cool orb-looking tank. We have these very cartoony-looking demons that contrast some of the more realistic and technical sci-fi stuff. It just feels very good to look at, and there are like some very strong character like driving like character arcs that are just driving through the whole thing, and they all kind of loop in together, whether it's Sheriff Rao / General Shiva and like his regret over his past as a general. We have General Are, and his current life as a general. We have, I forget what the Supreme Commander's name is, the floating ball guy. He is a very fun, like just plain evil kind of villain, serving a completely hapless and idiotic, selfish king kind of character that's hoarding everything. Reminded me a little bit of if you've ever read like the opening of Captain Harlock by Leiji Matsumoto. He reminds me of, I think, like the Prime Minister character from that, where he's just completely stupid and idiotic, and is just flying by the seat of his pants, sort of. I wonder if Toriyama's read a lot of Matsumoto. He has to have. He has to be familiar with the Leiji verse. Because if he does, that would make so much of Toriyama's work make sense in terms of like the technicality of some stuff. And this is just a very fun, very tight 6 episodes that are not extremely high stakes in terms of like the intensity, but like it still matters. All of it matters, and so it's got a nice drive behind it. It's very clever in sort of its battle strategies and stuff, and just the way that characters outsmart each other was very fun. I really enjoyed these first 6 episodes, and it kind of loses a significant portion of that in the second half. Not all of it, per se, but definitely a lot of it. There's not really any character arcs, per se, so it definitely feels a lot less driven in that respect. And it also feels much more like... Whereas the first 6 episodes felt like a very cohesive pastiche of different ideas, like all of those ideas that I just mentioned, those all felt very cohesive and interconnected. The second half, those ideas just feel like clunked together very haphazardly. There's a lot of like old Toriyama ideas in it, like the demons being sealed into jars reminds me of the evil containment wave from OG Dragon Ball. We've got a lot of Star Wars in this, specifically the very first Star Wars, like A New Hope. There's a lot of that in this. There's a lot of the I guess you could call the Wolfenstein aesthetic, or the Jinro aesthetic, in terms of the like basically the stormtroopers of this arc. And so we've got this weird it focuses a little bit more on the perception that humans have of demons and fiends in this world, and it puts a lot more emphasis on it, and it doesn't really resolve that to any degree, so that's a little disappointing. And also there's like I'm not going to call it a plot hole, but it makes you think. I can't believe I said that. It really makes you like wonder. So, in the first half of the series, the big thing is like all of the water in this country is being hoarded by the king so that he can sell it at an exorbitant price. And just maintain his lifestyle. But then in the second season, like, and the country is called like Sandland. That's where the title comes from. In the second season, we visit Forestland, which borders Sandland, apparently. And they just have a ton of water all the time. And it doesn't seem particularly difficult to get into, like, go past the borders. So how have people just not gone to the borders of Forestland and just gotten water from there? Why are there not Forestland, like, water runners driving into Sandland for a profit? It raises a lot more questions than it should, is what I'm trying to get at. Also, this is one of those, like, Toriyama doesn't kill people manga. This is definitely for a little bit of a younger demographic, but you can still enjoy it if you're an adult. But it does start to, like, raise some questions when in that second arc, when we're really starting to get into, like, genocide-y territory. So some leaders might have needed to die, is what I'm trying to say. Or it would have been more cathartic. Well, I don't know if it would have been more cathartic, because I don't particularly care for these, the villains of this arc. Muniel, this angel, I do like the concept of, like, well, it's a little bit overplayed at this point, the concept of, like, oh, what if the angels were actually the evil guys and the devils were the good guys? Woo. I don't think Toriyama puts a particularly interesting spin on that concept, which I don't expect him to put a spin on anything. I just expect him to do Toriyama. And this character was just very annoying and not, like, you hate him, but, like, it's not like a love-to-hate kind of villain. He's just kind of annoying. Although, his battles with Beelzebub were pretty decent. And this General Bread, I think? Yeah, Bread. Of course, Toriyama named stuff after food. He's fine, but not particularly interesting. The second half just isn't nearly as interesting as the first half. But I will say the animation remained consistent across the two halves. Which, this is a very weird 2D and 3D CG hybrid. There are a lot of CG character models in this, but most of the backgrounds are 2D. There's also just a lot of 2D character animation, a lot of 2D effects work, a lot of CG effects work. So it's just this big old mix of stuff. Kind of like the most recent Broly movie. It's kind of like that, except there is way more CG than even that. So, but I thought that movie looked really good, so I would say that's a positive comparison. And, you know, the fights are actually pretty good in this. Like, there's this one scene in the second half where Beelzebub is just bouncing off a bunch of robots as he destroys them, and the way he moves across the frame and the way the camera tracks him as he moves towards the frame, it felt like a panel from a Toriyama manga. Like, you could just feel the flow of the frame. And this show is very good at doing that in the action scenes. Sometimes the camera gets a little excessive with its movement in like the not action scenes, and like there's a lot of spots where it just sort of decides to spin around the characters for a while, and it gets a little annoying to look at. But it's generally well shot, well composited. I think Toriyama's designs translate to CG pretty well, surprisingly. So that's a plus. So yeah, there is also still a bit of jank in this. There's a lot of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Consistency of like relative size. Sometimes that looks a little weird, and sometimes the animation just looks bad. Like there's this one shot of the king running towards the camera with his arms like flailing like this that just looked really terrible. But overall, I enjoyed myself. If I were to watch this again, I would probably just watch the movie version, because like there was a movie version of this which was only the first like 6 episodes, and then there's like the full series version which has all 13 episodes. If I were to rewatch this, I would probably just watch the movie version, because the content is significantly better. Overall, I don't regret watching the whole thing, but I do think the second half definitely takes it down a bit.
Okay, Sandland is complete. We're going to scroll, and we're going to put it in the number 21 spot with a strong 6. That second half really did a number on it. If it was just the first half, it would be a little higher, but you know what? Still decent. Okay, so how many randoms do we have left? 20. So let's pull up our random number generator. See what we roll. It's going to be 17. Astro Note. Have not heard anyone say a single thing about this show. Could not possibly imagine what it's about. Something sci-fi related, maybe. Let's give it a go.
I swear to God, this show feels like a anime director from like 1975 fell out of a time machine and was like, okay, I'm gonna make a show. It feels, this premise feels so old school. And there is stuff about it that I do like. I love the like side cast of this series. It's very if you've read My Son Ikkoku by Rumiko Takahashi, the cast kind of feels like that, like these zany, wild ass roommates that surround the main character in this apartment complex. It's one of those kind of shows. And I legit like a lot of the side characters. There's this idol girl who's super cute, but also kind of has like a very angry side. This unemployed dude who just looks kind of weird and is like just constantly shows up behind you and jump scares you. So there is stuff to like here, but on the whole, a lot of it's kind of boring. And a lot of it just straight up doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, like, one of the things I notice is, like, this guy gets hired to be, like, the chef for this, apartment complex to, like, cook people breakfast. And the landlady basically says, I'm pretty sure she says your budget is 250 yen per person? Which at the current exchange rate is $1.58 per person. Not possible to feed someone on that amount. I don't know what food costs in Japan, but it ain't that fucking cheap. And there's just like this So the premise is the landlady's actually a fucking space alien who crash lands there, and like the guy is trying to hit on her, and he overhears her calling herself a widow, but in that sense she's saying like I am an alien species called a widow, but he thinks she is a widow as in someone with a dead husband, and he like immediately gets depressed and sulks back to his room. Like, why? What? Why does her being a widow turn you off? I'm confused, sir. She doesn't have kids. What? Why not? It's so weird and just not. I was just like pausing it like every 3 minutes to check my phone because like even though the comedy's good, it really doesn't have that much there to hold my attention otherwise. And also the animation is just holding on by a fucking thread. Like the opening like sci-fi sequence was just looked like it was being held together with duct tape, and the designs, the character designs are real hit and miss. The wackier characters actually look really good, like they actually have a lot of effort put into them, but then the main guy and the main girl just look bland as fuck and just not interesting at all. So yeah, I'd also the most generic anime soundtrack I have ever fucking heard. Like, you know that, just imagine, it's like just a like normal like in the shopping mall walking sequence with, you got a piano as like the rhythmic part and a little bit of a drum set, and then you got like a swing kind of trumpet melody over top, something like that. Like the most generic soundtrack I have ever heard. Like, if it didn't actually make sense, like melodically, I would have said that this was an AI made soundtrack. It's that generic. So yeah, not vibing with this one.
Okay, Astro Note off the list. Let's roll again and see what we get. It's gonna be 18. Touken Ranbu Kai. Okay, this is part of the Touken Ranbu franchise that I have not gotten more than a few episodes into of any entry so far. I think if I don't like this one, I'm just going to give up on any entries in the future. So maybe this will be the one.
Okay, yeah, I think we're at the point where this franchise where you actually do kind of have to be a fan now to understand what's going on. Like, I kind of grasp the basics of it, but I still don't know a ton about Japanese history, so a lot of the details are just whizzing right past me. Although I will say, I have seen so many anime now that open on the burning of Nobunaga's castle that I saw this anime do this, and I immediately thought, wait, haven't I seen this anime before? No, I have not seen this anime before. It's just, I have seen this scene so much as the opening scene for an anime that it's just in my brain now. But yeah, this is like a, in case you didn't know, this is like a Pretty Boys anime set in some kind of period of Japan that I don't know. The Ieyasu is currently alive, so whatever year that takes place. See, I need to learn more Japanese history if I really want to enjoy these historical shows. But also, this show just assaults you with characters non-stop for like the first 6 minutes before we meet someone who I assume might be a main character, or might not be. Who knows? They could just be adding more and more characters, but I have not been able to latch onto a single character in this, so I just got kind of bored. The character designs are real pretty, though. The CG monsters are pretty fucking terrible, though. So, balances out, I guess. Yeah, not gonna watch any more of this. Let's move on.
Okay, Touken, Ranbu, Kai off the list. We're gonna do one more random and see what it is. 11. What is that? Blue Archive, the animation. Okay. This is based on a very popular video game that I mostly know through fan art on Twitter. I have lifted my ban on anime based on video games a while ago, so let's give this one a shot.
See, this is why I didn't watch anime based on video games for a very long time, because they suck shit. I got how far in? 7 minutes in to Blue Archive, and it's so fucking boring and so clunkily written. That opens on this fucking philosophical word salad nonsense that means nothing. And then I don't even remember if there was an OP or not. I don't think there was. There might have been. I didn't pay attention. Really. I don't think there was. That's the kind of mindset these kinds of shows put me in. So then we get really fucking ham-fisted world building and exposition dumping from a newscaster, and then we get this really terrible street view shot, like over top down street view of a street. That's what I'm trying to say. These shows are so terribly put together that they break my brain. And it looked fucking shitty and terrible. The color design was sucked. Compositing sucked. The texturing sucked. And then we cut to what is, I assume, the new student council, or temporary student council since the old one disappeared. And they just basically all go around in a circle, and essentially what happens is, now what's your personality trait? Oh, I'm the nerdy one. I'm the rich one. I'm the sleepy one. I'm the soft-spoken one. And it's so fucking bad. It's so poorly written and not interesting. And then it cuts to more, not cuts to, it just rolls into more exposition dumps. And it's so bad. It's just shoving you full of information that is not interesting. It's also not particularly good looking. Like, the only saving grace of the show is the base character model of the characters. And not even, like, the actual character models themselves, because the designs are not well animated. They don't look particularly great. They don't look terrible, but that's mostly because the designs themselves at their base are really good, because this is a waifu game. So, like, what's the main character? Shioriko, I think? The gray-haired cat girl, who I have jerked off to several times in doujins already. She looks cool. The other cat girl with the red eyes looks cool. The other ones are fine, I guess. This is bad. It's bad. No more.
Okay, Blue Archive is coming off the list. And I think now we're going to jump down to another end cap, which is Jellyfish Can't Swim at Night. This is an original series from an ex-Zebek employee, if I recall correctly. I believe there's some Yuri in it, possibly. And also, I've heard that the writing is very hit and miss. But it was super hyped the entire time it was airing, and it's the only high dive show from this season since Whisper Me a Love Song didn't finish. I've been rambling for too long. Let's jump in.
Love me some good original anime. I believe this is original. Should be, yeah. I just finished up all of Jellyfish Can't Swim at Night. Good shit. You'll have to excuse me though if my thoughts are a bit scattered because I was going to finish this up on a Monday night and then Illinois decided to have like a dozen different tornadoes and I lost power for about 40 hours. So there was a very long gap between the 11th and 12th episode for me. Killed my vibe a little bit. Just a little bit. But as you can see, power is back now, and I finished the final episode. Boy, is this a show for creators, especially like modern creators, both in a like thematic sense and a character sense, and even like a technical, like realistic sense. Like I complain so often about how, what am I trying to say? About how like YouTube is portrayed in anime. This one nails it like almost 100%. Like it, whether it's like the technicalities of going viral, the actual like layouts and formats of stuff, how stuff is made on the back end. Like, it really, like, knows its stuff. Especially, like, there's a lot of, like, VTubing elements to this. And it kind of nails it. I don't know a lot about the back end of VTubing. But, like, the assets on screen looked realistic enough. Like, there's some stuff where you could argue, like, could a VTuber model actually do that in real time? But I've seen certain models do that. And so, like, it just really... This is a show that actually, like, knows what the fuck it's talking about, which is very refreshing for, like, a modern media landscape when we're talking about, like, new media, like YouTube and VTubers and, like, just going viral on the internet. As opposed to that fucking terrible show, what was it, Viral Hit or whatever, that just got everything fucking wrong. But aside from like the technical aspects, because I could go on about the technical aspects of it forever, it really just nails it also like nails the culture of this stuff as well, just sort of in how these characters specifically, and like I just really enjoyed how like online fame is handled in this. It feels there is so much stuff in this where it was like, oh, I fucking feel that, like, whether it's like this idea of like one of the characters like gets quote unquote canceled sort of for like, that's the sort of inciting incident for this new part of her journey. She punches one of her, like, co-stars or co-bandmates, co-idols, whatever you want to call it. And the, like, specific language of what is used felt very realistic, especially because, like, idol culture is so much stricter about how, like, pristine idols should be. And so, like, the fallout from that felt very realistic. The way that fans react and talk about their idols in this show felt very realistic. Like, for as like, almost wish fulfillment-y as this some of the bare bones plot is, like, it actually portrays that wish fulfillment-ness in a very, like, believable way that I very much am, like, I look at it and go like, oh yes, this is real. Like the way one of the main characters is like her. So we have the main character who's Kano, who is an ex like idol, now just a solo artist, working with this small group of friends that she's gathered, and one of those friends is someone who used to be like a big fan of her, like Kimura, and so like to use the modern parlance, Kano would have been Kimura's Oshi, her number one, and the way that Kimura acted around her, slightly exaggerated for comedy, but in terms of like the emotional parts of it, make a lot of sense. Like, for example, like I understand what it is like to have an Oshi now, I guess. Not quite to that extreme, but I mean, I'm wearing a Mume shirt right now. This is the new shirt. This just came in on Monday. I'm wearing it specifically for this video, so it came in at a perfect time. And like, not sure if you're watching the video. Like, I got some more Mume merch back there as well. So I get the excitement. I get the joy that you have from being like, from having like a number one without crossing over into like the obsessive territory, obviously. And where was I going with this? Yeah, just really understands the culture, and the culture sort of informs how these characters grow and develop over the series. Whether it's like, obviously, Kimura going from a fan to a friend. We have Kano's journey back into the world of entertainment and the like sort of online trauma that she has to overcome to get there. One of the moments that I really like related to like super hard was where we have Mahiru, who's like the illustrator of the group, and like being seen like super self-conscious about her art, being surrounded by other really talented other artists. Like we have a singer, a composer / pianist, and a VTuber who are all like super talented at what they do, and she just kind of sees herself as not quite as talented as the rest of them. And so like this moment where like a more popular illustrator does a fan art of her original design, and seeing how much traction that gets in comparison to her design, felt like the just massive ball of swirling and conflicting emotions in that moment just felt very fucking real. And like there is so, all of the main characters in this have a wow, she is literally me element. Like whether it's that self-consciousness of Mahiru, the like Oshi elements of Kimura. With Kano, we have like this idea of like, who are you performing for? Why are you performing? Like, do you have someone in your mind when you were performing, and how does that affect your performance? Back when I was a performance major for a music degree in college, that is something that significantly affected my ability to perform at times. Like, who was I making my art for? And I even wrote like a little short story after I switched from music to being an English major. I wrote a short story about that concept that I'll have to dig out of my hard drives from wherever that's at some point. And then we have Kiwi, this VTuber who goes by their VTuber name is Nox, and we have this. I'm gonna go with they as the pronouns for this, because there's I think it's like the second to last episode, they kind of have their full on like, I don't want to be perceived as a girl moment. And like there's definitely hints it doesn't come out of nowhere either. Like episode 3 was just this massive torrent of emotions with how this character is structured. Again, I'm trying to remember exactly like the details of it, but just being perceived, this idea of being perceived as something that you're not, this idea of having a dual identity, or just a completely different identity online, and wrestling with the how those two things are not the same, or at least you don't perceive them as being the same, or how other people don't perceive them as being the same. Just some very powerful stuff there that also ended up having some really great LGBT representation. We have I'm gonna say this is a confirmed trans character, or at least a non-binary character at the very least. The cinematic elements of that, and how people look at their body versus how they try to present themselves, and just the way they change both physically and mentally as they grow up, and how that sort of creates a dissonance in their brain. Just really incredible writing all around. I would say, I am not sure which character I relate to the most in this. I guess I would say that I really don't know, because all of these characters are just have so many facets of their personalities that I just heavily relate to a very large degree, and it's executed in such, their character arcs are executed in such incredible ways. Not all of it is perfect though. Like, again, maybe it's just because I had to put this series down for like a day and a half because of the power outage. But I feel like the last episode wrapped up a little bit too neatly. Like, it was a little too, and they lived happily ever after. I feel like we could have used like a little bit more dissonance at the end, whether it's with Kano's mom, who is kind of this point of emotional contention in her life, and how she is just all business all the time, and that has sort of made her role as a mother not the best. Or we have the girl from Sunflower, this idol group that Kano is the punches pre this series beginning. I feel like there could have been some more points of contention there. And also there's just, if I had a nickel for every anime in the past year where episode 7 specifically had a weird boob groping scene out of nowhere, I would have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it is very, very weird that happened twice. The first one being Mushoku Tensei Season 2 Part 1, where that was just fucking horrific. This one was just weird. Like, it's this almost filler-like episode where Kano and Kiwi go to get their motorbike licenses, and there's this adult woman there who is just bragging about her breast implants. And such a weird episode, bordering on like not okay. I would say not bordering on. This is an adult woman basically flirting with high school girls. And so fucking weird. Like, you could cut out the first probably 14 minutes of that episode and miss basically nothing, because like you kind of need the last 5 to 6 minutes of the episode, because there's some really important stuff with Mahiru and Kano in it, where it shows like their motivations for what they're doing in those particular moments. But man, that episode sure takes some wind out of its sail, because like the first 6 episodes of this show are like a decent 9 at least. That just some really fucking phenomenal stuff, and then it just does that. And I feel like if we took that part out completely and replaced it with some other stuff to like bolster some of the Sunflower Dolls subplot or something else, I don't know, that just didn't need to be there. So that was weird. That's really all I have to say on the narrative end, I think. Visually, it's just really fucking good looking show. This is a Doga Kobo production, and it kind of rides a line between what Doga Kobo has kind of become known for, where it's like on the one end we have like traditional Doga Kobo stuff, which is like bouncy, fluffy, cute girls doing cute things stuff, where the animation's really fluid and vibrant and stuff. And then on the other end we have like the Oshi no Ko, where it's just this very extremely polished production that doesn't move a lot, but is very, very pretty to look at, and the color design is just very striking. This is like a sort of halfway between those two. This is a very fun, lightly bouncy kind of show, with really, really strong color design and lighting. Character designs are simple but unique and very memorable. I love Kano and Kiwi's designs. The general like motif of the jellyfish made, and the like colorful ambiance that accompanies that, made this show just very, very pretty to look at. There were very few moments in this show where I was like, oh, this could have looked a little better. It is at least very competent 95 to 99% of the time. And more often than not, just very, very pretty overall. Yeah, it's just, this was a damn good show. Had some weird moments in it. And some stuff could have used a little bit more fleshing out before it got wrapped up. But man, some of this stuff, just both the individual character arcs that all of these characters go through, and the relationships that they form, and the complexities of those relationships, and how they clash very often. Like, there's sort of like a band breakup kind of moment near the end of the series where Kano says something that she doesn't mean, and it's like, she says the thing, but it's like you very obviously understand why she just said that, but also understand that she didn't mean to say that, and how other people perceive that and get hurt by it, and it was just very heartbreaking. Yeah, this was really fucking good.
Okay, Jellyfish Can't Swim at Night is complete. We're gonna scroll up, and we're gonna put you in the number 6 spot for now, which might seem low, but that's only because there's already so many other great shows, and this one's getting a strong 8, and this is like the strongest strong 8 I could possibly give for this one. Like, if we look at my big list, like, this is at the top of my 8s, just bordering on 9s right now. This is, if the ending had been a little bit stronger, this could have been a favorite, but still really, really damn good.